Good evening, everybody. This is the Gary Neville Podcast, which comes from a beautifully mild, blue sky, sunny day at Anfield, where we've watched a really good football game, Gary. I suppose if it lacked anything, it was jeopardy, because Liverpool are unlikely to be champions now. It's still mathematically possible. But that aside, it was a good contest, good goals, and lots to take out of it.
Yeah, it was a good game. All it lacked, as you say, is that edge that you feel when there is something that matters on the game, and it didn't really have that sort of appearance. Obviously Liverpool are secure in the position that they're finishing. We think Tottenham are secure in the position that they're going to finish. They could, because of Aston Villa's result at Brighton, but they've not demonstrated enough in this last few weeks, and certainly in this last week, that they're going to chase Aston Villa for that Champions League space. And yeah, I think in the end, Tottenham coming back and scoring a couple of goals made it interesting at the end, but there's some good football. I think important for Liverpool, obviously, to get as many points as possible, because they've got to start now. You know, they're building for next season already. I know it's going to be a different manager, but a lot of these players will be here, and they've got to start thinking about how they close that gap to Arsenal and City above them, and obviously as well Jurgen Klopp just having as good a send-off as possible in his last few games.
And when you see a performance like that, which was kind of uninhibited, unchained, if you're a Liverpool supporter, are you in a sense regretful because you think what might have been?
I think they probably, they're an experienced bunch, these Liverpool fans, and they probably got past that. We've said in the last couple of weeks, I think they were running 100 million miles an hour to try and keep up with Arsenal and City. Their performance levels weren't at the same level, and they were just hanging on in there. And then at the end, it's just dipped a little bit. But they could end up with, what is it, 8? What are they on now? 878 points are they on today?
Yeah, I think they can get to 84.
Yeah, mate, that's a pretty good total in any season. To think where Liverpool were at the start of the season, in my mind, without a midfield, being a little bit scruffy in the transfer market, wanting Caicedo and Lavia, they missed out on both, and they ended up with Endo. We would take ourselves back into that moment. You've still got to say that's a hell of a points total that they're going to potentially achieve this season, and obviously winning a trophy as well. So, yeah, it isn't all doom and gloom. The same for Spurs, actually. When you think Harry Kane leaves, new manager comes in, he wasn't their first choice, and he's completely changed this club around. They played some beautiful football all season, but they've just faded at the end, and it's getting a little bit like the end of the season needs to come for them. But they've had a tough run of games in the last few, couple of weeks. The North London derby, Chelsea, Newcastle, now Liverpool. They've got City to come. But I still think it's been a very good season for Spurs. And if you said to me at the start of the season they would finish 5th, I'd say that's a really, really good year. So I think for both of these teams, there's a little bit of disappointment about how it's ending. But we should look back upon what we thought at the start of the season. For both of them, I think it's been a good season. And
do you think, in a way, Spurs, oddly, are suffering from setting their bar unrealistically high through August, September, October, when they flew out of the blocks, and everybody, yourself included, singing their praises, this wonderful, this crazy high line, all of that wonderful stuff, and it hasn't quite ended that way.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's a little bit of fatigue or something, it's just a little bit of a disconnect at the end. The manager looks a little bit more, I want to say this in a respectful manner, just maybe a little less faith in them in this period than he did have at the start of the season. That's natural when they're not quite doing what he wants them to do. And I think he's a manager, look, I don't know him at all, but he looks like to me a manager that really, it's about your intent of how you play the game, how you approach the game. And I think that in the last week or two, there's been a sense that they haven't been at it. And I think the very least he expects, but every manager expects, is being at it, because he doesn't play a different style. When Spurs play the way they play under Ange Postecoglou, it's at high tempo or nothing. It looks really bad. Do you understand what I mean? There's no sort of like in between. And I think that's where Jurgen Klopp's team have been at times in the last 7 or 8 years. When I think Liverpool are at the best is when they're really electric. And the same with Spurs, the speed of the passing and the electricity in the game, and when it's not there, it's just a stark difference, and it really stands out as more than it does with other teams. City are like that, the way they play the game, but these two teams here, they play with managers that rely upon that massive energy in football, and you notice it when it isn't quite at the level. So I think that's what he'll be a little annoyed with in the last couple of weeks. He'll be searching and thinking already who's going to be on the bus next season, who's not going to be on the bus. And it was interesting, I think, and I said it in the first half, I really liked Sarr and Basuma in the first part of the season. Then they missed him, I think, in the middle section. But actually, when they've had the footballers on the pitch at the end with Lo Celso, Skip and Maddison, particularly when now teams this idea that teams have worked Spurs out, all they're doing is really narrowing their sort of defensive structure against them to stop that sort of, if you like, balls being played through, where Porro go in there and Udogie have been going in there famously all year, along with the midfield players. Now teams are very narrow and they're letting it go wide on the easy pass, and that's when you've got to be really good and still play in there, but you need to be a fantastic football player. And I'm not quite sure Sarr and Basuma have got that sort of, if you like, that quick feet and awareness. So it, to me, feels like what type of players is he going to sign at the end of the season? Because one thing he's not going to do is give up on his values and his principles. He's going to play his way. So he needs to make sure that he brings in players, obviously, that suit that. And I hope the club really back him. Because I said before the game in a Sky Sports News interview, this is a guy to get behind. You know, the last 4 years have been a real drain at Spurs. Honestly, at times you've watched them and thought, you know what you're going to get. But it isn't Spurs. You know, I say this, Spurs have got a style, a character, a personality as a football club, and arrogance in the way in which they play. And he brings all those things, that confidence in the game, and they should invest in that. Because the Spurs fans are really happy. You know, I know they finished fourth at times, they finished second at times in the last 6, 7, 8 years. But they should be really happy with how they finished fifth. Do you understand what I mean? Sometimes for a football fan, it's how you finish fifth, how you lose. They're the really important factors, because you know you're going to have good times with it as well, and you want those highs, and he's brought highs this season, Ange Postecoglou.
He surely has. So time for your sort of weekly assessment of the title race, acknowledging absolutely, because Liverpool fans will listen to this, Liverpool are, strictly speaking, still in it. But dealing with Manchester City and Arsenal, I guess it's becoming harder and harder to find something fresh to say.
Yeah.
This weekend, they've both won comfortably. And I must say, having been at City myself last night, if I was an Arsenal fan watching that, I'd have thought that there was never a moment when you felt City weren't going to win.
No, that's the problem. You know, a few weeks ago I said that they have to be perfect, and obviously they just had that one slip up, didn't they, against Aston Villa. There's an inevitability to City, isn't there, at this stage of the season, of getting the job done and knowing what they need to do. And they have got that difficult game against Spurs on paper in 10 days. But the way Spurs are at this moment in time, I think it'll be difficult for them to be able to sort of, a City that's playing for the title is a very difficult proposition. And yeah, as I sit here this weekend, you know, I think Arsenal played really well, did their job. City play really well, do the job. But you're wondering where the title race is going to twist. Where is the twist? City don't give you twists. You know, you always said, sort of years gone by, there'll be a twist and a turn, there'll be something happens. And I'm not sure it is going to happen.
For the record, City go to Fulham, of course,
yes,
before they go to Spurs.
They do. And what normally happens in these moments, is that if City win on the Saturday, Arsenal drop points on the Sunday, and City win the title on the Tuesday. That's what normally happens. In my sort of experience of these title races in history, you think it's going to go down to the final day. It may go down to the final day. And if it went to the final day, that would mean that Arsenal have gone and beaten Manchester United at Old Trafford, which, you know, we can laugh and we can giggle about how Manchester United have been. But Arsenal going to Old Trafford and winning, that's going to be a hell of a win. So, yeah, I have that fear that the title could be over a week on Tuesday when, you know, in terms of sort of the neutral, and, you know, I am a neutral when it comes to it. I don't support City or Arsenal, but I want the title race to go to the final day, obviously. My fear is it won't if City win on Saturday against Fulham, which I think they will, and that United take points off United take points off Arsenal on the Sunday, and then, because I think if Arsenal go to the last day of the season and they've beaten Manchester United, this is a massive increase in sort of performance level. It is anyway. So Arsenal have already, I think, proven that they're a different side than last season. But I think it just feels that there's inevitability to it, that City will just be perfect towards the end, or to the end. So
Manchester United have their part to play, and in that context, and in the context of the fact that they're Monday Night Football tomorrow, and that Chelsea have won 5-0 today, and are potentially coming good at the very end, that's a bit twitchy around the last European spot or two.
For United?
For United, yeah. And indeed Chelsea. You know, they're in the same mix.
Yeah, I mean, Chelsea, I think, have just improved, obviously, in the last few weeks. And just picking my phone up there, I think it was at half-time, just looking at the sort of the notifications again. It said that Harry Maguire's got injured today in training, which that's the one position they couldn't afford an injury. It's the one player that, you know, he's the only defender fit or centre-back fit at this moment in time. So that would be a real problem for United. So, yeah, I mean, United's season largely depends upon the FA Cup. In terms, just generally, their league's form this season's been so inconsistent. Yeah, they want to try and finish as well as they can and win tomorrow night at Crystal Palace and give a great account of themselves next week against Arsenal, but getting as many players fit as possible in the next couple of weeks so that they're as ready as they can be to try and do something against Manchester City on the 25th of May in that cup final is their absolute priority.
So just finally, I'm sure the supporters down in Suffolk would love a lovely Gary Neville welcome back to the Premier League for Ipswich Town, which is a terrific old club. Sort of dinosaurs like me love Ipswich because it's such a warm, welcoming, special part of the world. It's a club for its constituency. You saw the images yesterday, which were great. And I think from a position of neutrality, as you say, I think it's just lovely they're back.
Yeah, well done to Ipswich. Well done to Kieran McKenna. Well done to the players. I played there once. I think it was 2000 I played there 24 years ago. And it was a tough game, I remember. I think it was a night game. I think we drew 1-1. And we flew into Norwich. I remember we flew into Norwich, actually, to go to the game. That's what stands out for me. And to be fair, if we're going to get there for next season in August, I think we have to set off next week.
It's a long way from your house.
Yeah, but you're right. It's a club that makes you feel nostalgic about sort of top-level football. I remember watching them at Old Trafford get beat 9-0. I wasn't in the squad that day, but I remember Andy Cole scoring 5. But I always remember the Ipswich badge on the Panini sticker book. You know,
the White Horse.
Yeah, you just think about the Ipswich badge and you think about Portman Road and obviously Bobby Robson, sort of like quite nostalgic about Ipswich Town. And, you know, there are a lot of clubs that we know that have sort of gone down the leagues who've been in sort of, when you're growing up, and I was growing up, Ipswich Town were an important football club and still are an important football club, of course, but you do sort of forget about sometimes these clubs. It happened with Nottingham Forest when they disappeared for a long time, and other clubs that you know have been great clubs in your childhood. And it is good to have Ipswich Town back. Luton Town similar this year back in the Premier League when you think about them in the sort of in the 80s. So yeah, no, I think it's really good that we get football clubs like Ipswich with a great history back into the Premier League. It's an amazing day for them yesterday. To get consecutive promotions is just amazing, honestly. It's so difficult for them to do, and it should never be underestimated how challenging it is for clubs that have been down there for longer than the parachute payments to get back up again, because their budgets and their resource is so much less. So their coaching and their recruitment has to be highly skilled and brilliant, and that's what we've seen at Ipswich. Well done to them. It takes a big effort.
And by the way, a lot of the team who've got promoted this year are the same players who came out of League One, so that says a lot about Kieran McKenna.
Absolutely. Good coaching, momentum, stability, spirit. Massive factors in building a team, and you can achieve special things sometimes. It's difficult when you're up against the might of the 40-odd million pounds parachute payments that go to the clubs that have come down, and the ones that are sort of, if you like, getting the second and third year payments that are still in there. You're at a massive disadvantage. So you realise how challenging that is to get promoted 2 years on the bounce. Not so much out of League One, because they'll have had one of the biggest budgets in League One, but to get that budget, you know, to the constraints that they will have had in sort of in the Championship, it's an amazing achievement, and one that should be sort of, well, it has been massively rewarded, and I think they're having their celebration today, aren't they, around the city?
I think it's the end of season dinner tomorrow. But
tomorrow.
Maybe they're on a bus today. You might be right.
Well, they'll be on a bus at some point, and you know something? They're special moments that you should have. You know, they'll have to get back on their training bus next week and think about next season and think about the Premier League and how challenging that is. But for last night, for tonight, go for your lives, because you deserve it, and it's a bank holiday weekend. It couldn't have happened at any better time for them to go for it, could it? It's brilliant. So well done to everybody from Ipswich and Leicester as well. Obviously, they went up a couple of weeks ago and lifted the Championship trophy yesterday. And for the 4 teams that are in the playoffs, then those nail-biting moments to come, and it's obviously one of the great days in a week or two, isn't it, when the Championship playoff final happens, and we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Always great to keep the Premier League fresh, and of course we're 2 weeks away now from knowing who the Premier League champions are. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.